Yongnuo is going to announce their new Micro Four Third camera with their model number YN455 Mark II. So the Mark 1 version of this camera had Android version 10, and the new one will have Android version 13. And the old one could support 4K at 30 frames per second, whereas this new one will support 4K at 60 frames per second. And it will also have USB video class, so you can directly use it as a webcam or for live streaming. And it is a Micro Four Thirds camera, so you can use the existing Micro Four Thirds lenses with this camera. This website has done some testing for the dynamic range of the OM1 Mark II. And if you look at this chart, you can see that it's pretty much identical to the original OM1 in terms of quality. So there's no significant changes there. And I've also added the EM1 Mark III and the EM1 Mark II to this chart so that you can compare it with those two cameras. And again, if you look at the differences between them, they're pretty much identical. In fact, in some areas, the EM1 Mark III and the EM1 Mark II even perform better than both the OM1 and the OM1 Mark II. But I think where the OM1 and OM1 Mark II are better than the EM1 Mark II and Mark III is when it comes to video recording, because they have a faster readout speed. So when you're recording video, it will oversample the sensor for all the different frame rates. And it can also do 4K 60, which the EM1 Mark II and Mark III couldn't do. OM System has released a statement about their support service for some of the older cameras like the EM1 and the EM10. And what they're saying essentially is that they will stop providing a support service for these older cameras going forward, but they still have some parts for these cameras. So while they do have the parts, they will continue to provide some repair services for these cameras, but once the parts run out, they will stop it completely. So depending on the problem that you have with these cameras, EM1, EM10, and the EPL6, then you might be able to get it repaired or not. Canon has filed a patent for using both manual focus and autofocus, and they seem to suggest that they will have this as a button on their lens. Whereas on all the Olympus cameras that I've been using, this is a feature which you can choose how you want to do your focus. So if you want, you can use autofocus. If you want, you can use manual focus. And if you want, you can use manual focus with autofocus. So essentially what you do is you use autofocus to get single point autofocus. And then if you rotate the focus ring on the lens, you still have manual focus control over that. So this doesn't seem to be a new thing, but the fact that it's a button might be slightly more convenient that you can switch between the different modes. Although on Olympus cameras, you can configure any button on the camera to work as a shortcut button for this. I've mentioned a few streaming cameras in the past 2 weeks, and this is another streaming camera called the Aicoco onAir. And this is not a Micro Four Thirds camera, but the price is interesting. So $250 for this camera, which has a screen as well on the back. And you can also twist the camera. So if you wanted to have it in a selfie mode, you could do that. And considering the price of this, you could buy 4 of these with the price of one Logitech Mevo Core, or you could buy 3 of these for the price of one YoloLiv AlphaCam. And another interesting thing about this camera is, if I just scroll down to the spec of this camera, is the working temperature. So the working temperature for this camera is between minus 20 degrees all the way up to 75 degrees, which is actually really hot. So if you're using this camera to stream sporting events, then for the price of one Micro Four Thirds camera, you could buy 4 of these and place them in different places on a football pitch or whatever sport it is. And also because they're cheaper, you're less worried about them getting damaged. And when I'm mentioning the price of this camera obviously has a fixed lens, whereas the Micro Four Thirds cameras, you need to add a lens to it as well. So the cost goes up, whereas this camera is cheap. So even if something was to happen to it, it wouldn't matter. But it has IPX4 rainproofing, and it works in a big range of temperatures. And it does have some other interesting things. For example, you can change the battery while the camera is on by taking out the battery. So it must have some sort of capacitors or a smaller inbuilt battery that will be able to operate for, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds or whatever it is while you change the battery. So you can hot swap the batteries while the camera is operating and while it is live streaming. And it has similar things like any other streaming camera, so micro SD cards for doing the recording. And it's quite light as well, so it only weighs 300 grams, including the battery. And on the topic of live streaming, I thought it's worth mentioning the Canon power zoom adapter. So in theory, this power zoom adapter will be able to convert normal Canon lenses to ones with electronic zoom, but there is some dependency between using this power zoom adapter and the Canon lenses that actually have compatibility with it. So there's a part of the lens which needs to have the receiving connections for this to work with it. So I don't know if you can see these connector parts here, but they will connect to the lens. And currently, to my knowledge, there's only one lens which supports this. So yeah, it's a 24 to 105 millimeter f2.8. And there you can see, so it has a USB port as well, so you can power this via USB-C, but you can also power it via the lens interface. So when it connects to the lens, you can draw power from the camera. But if you have an external USB power, then obviously we'll use that power instead, so not to drain the battery of the camera. So I think this is an interesting concept, but I think the power zoom adapters need to be completely separate from the functionality of the lens itself, so that you can have a power zoom adapter and use it for any lens that you want, and it should also be possible to change the ring size. That way you can obviously have a lot of flexibility. But then again, if you have a solution like that, it's likely that it won't be controllable from within the camera and the remote applications that you use to control the camera. But nevertheless, I think this is a good idea going forward, particularly when you're remote controlling cameras for live streaming.